And so today we are addressing fragments. Next week, I will take these two together and I will talk about common splices and run-ons. So we're not going to worry about those today. We don't try to take too much at one time. Just enough that you can assimilate it and understand it and go away with something. So today what we're going to do is talk about what is a fragment, why can't we write it like that, and when we do identify it, how do we fix it? And so when you leave today, I'm hoping that that's what you've gotten out of this class. All right, so we need to get a little bit of terminology out of the way before we get started, okay? All right, so you can write this down on the back of your paper. Some of it is written on the paper itself, but let's just try to get some terms out of the way so that everybody will understand what we're talking about, okay? If we talk about a phrase, it is a group of words that has either a noun or a verb in it. Okay? Not both a subject and a verb, which we know sentences need to have. Okay? So this would be something like hitting the ball. And I know it has a noun there, but okay. Hitting the ball. Now, you say, well, I would never write that down as a sentence, but we're using very simple examples, okay? So a phrase is not a sentence. It has something missing, okay? And in your case, she said it has a subject missing because we have here hitting the ball, and so we're asking, well, who is hitting the ball, right? And are we talking about the batter or the pitcher or my brother or who's hitting the ball, right? And so I'm going to just write something down here, but do you see that if I have a phrase, and if I had just written hitting the ball, even though I started this with a capital letter and put a period at the end, that is not a sentence. Starting it with a capital letter and ending it with a period does not constitute a sentence. And I'm going to tell you what does. But we don't have it here, do we? We have to add something to it. So we're going to add my brother. Now, don't we need a helping verb here? What could we put in there?
Is.
Is, okay? Is that right, Lisa? Didn't we study that?
Yeah.
That this is a helping verb right here. Some verbs are only one word, but this one takes a helper, and so this one is hitting. So, or you could have written was hitting, right? So now if we write, my brother's hitting the ball. Now we have a sentence. And the reason we have a sentence is that we have a subject, we have a verb, and we have a complete thought. If you have a fragment, one or more of those three components is not there. You must have these three things in order to have a complete sentence. A complete sentence, you could have 20 words in a group of words. Start with a capital letter and put a period at the end. It isn't the length that determines if it's a sentence or not. You could even have one word that's a sentence. I'll show you that in just a minute. You've got to have subject, verb, and a complete thought, okay? And so a phrase is not going to be a sentence. Many people write a phrase as a sentence and then get it marked off because it's a fragment. The way to fix that is to put in whatever element that is missing, okay? All right, then the next term I want you to know is the word clause. Now this is not Santa Claus, that's like that. This is clause. And this is a group of words that have both a subject and a verb. A group of words that has a subject and verb. Okay? Unlike the phrase that has one or the other. It has both. It can be one of two. It can be independent. And notice that word independent is spelled with E's in here. I see that spelled with A's sometimes, and that's wrong. It's E's all the way. It can be an independent clause. Now, if something is independent, can it stand alone? If it's independent, yes, it can. Yes, it can. So this is what we were talking about. It has a subject, it has a verb, and it has a complete thought. My sister left the room. Do I have a subject?
Yes.
What is it?
Sister.
What did she do?
Left the room.
She left the room. Okay, it makes a complete thought. It may not be the greatest sentence ever written in the history of the English language, but it is a sentence, and if I wrote it down in a paper or wherever, whatever it is I'm writing, it would be okay. All right? It would be okay. All right, now, the second type of clause that we have is called dependent. And again, notice the E's in here, a dependent clause. Okay, here you've got the subject and the verb, but no complete thought. Okay? If you do your income tax and you have someone that is a dependent, can that person stand alone?
No.
Has to be kind of hooked on to someone else, doesn't it? Included somewhere else. That's the same thing with the dependent clause.
So
I'm going to put,
like when you're little, you depend on your mother and father.
there you go.
You're-
You depend on something else. This dependent clause is going to do the same thing. I'm going to add something to here. And I'm going to write, do you see that where I did this up here? My sister left the room. I'm going to put a word in front of this, and it's going to change it from independent to dependent. Before it could stand alone, and I'm going to add a word to the beginning of it that's going to make it unable to stand by itself. And so I'm then going to write, because my sister left the room. Okay? All right, let's look at that then. I've started it with a capital letter. I put a period at the end. It must be a sentence, right?
What caused her to leave the room?
Okay, that's what we're going to get to. All right, so don't I still have my subject and don't I still have my verb?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So right now it's dependent,
Yes.
and we're gonna turn it to independent.
That's exactly what we're going to do. What is it that made it dependent? What did I do there?
Because
That word because. Now, it's kind of a long name. It's called a subordinating conjunction. And you recognize that name. Does that sound familiar to some of you, subordinating conjunctions? Here's a very important rule. If your independent clause comes first, no comma here before the because. If this part, the dependent clause, comes first, then you do use a comma. Think you'll ever use that rule in your whole life?
Oh, yeah.
Every day.